This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and yeah, today officially the Trek Core experiences. My Trek Core experiences, the Chimera's experience thing up online on Amazon. If you want to get it, it's the cheapest book there. It's $2.99 or something like that. It's the cheapest one on my site. So go get it. I added such a low discount that no one will notice. My cheapest one. Yeah, and I mentioned the Fearful Symmetry and the Arbiter, the two stories I wrote during the Star Trek contest around 1995-96, and I found those stories again, and I found the 2002 releases. So that would have been the later releases before Starcrackers got hold of it, before Space Vanguard's ESV, so it was before that, before Distant Destinies took one. Took the other, and so because they're the two originals before they were changed, they're technically the Star Trek ones, or the truest forms of them. And I looked them over, and edited them and stuff. And yeah, since they're the original ones, this is sort of an update on the Chimera stories, Starship Locations Strange Worlds. So the Starship thing, Starship Locations thing is, looked them over and decided, you know what, since we've been using DS9 and Voyager characters in Strange Worlds, it would be really easy for these two scripts to just kind of change some of the names around and actually make them into episodes of this season. So why not? You can leave the story almost as is, because they are archetypes. The brash captain and the political captain and the other various characters. The Fearful Symmetry was mainly about a Dominion trap by these two different Dominions, and a Vorta, female Vorta. They were all pretending to the Missy and Latori. Missy and Latori sounds familiar because that's from Space Vanguards, but we'd probably have to change those names because they are from the other story and it's kind of confusing. But they could easily change that. The character in the story of Viticola is basically a young Odo, so he could be Odo, and you could take Nog could be Quark, conceivably, so it could still work. A youngish. So yeah, you could totally make that work. You could totally change it around. And they weren't kidding. They weren't woofing. Helping back in the day would have said. It was definitely a Deep Space Nine story. Kind of a follow-up to the Jem'Hadar, so I clearly was aware of it, that episode. And I wanted to explore more of the female Vorta. So yes, I knew about the Jem'Hadar. Tell from the script, I knew about it, and I wanted to expand on that, make that, I wanted to go further than that. The writers' room people, which I wasn't aware of at the time, only afterward, after the rejection letter, they wanted to do something else with the female founder, other than what I had in mind. And there was this funny, there was like a retrieval letter that I found among the archives. And it was a retrieval letter dated 1997, in which I was asking about the scripts that I had submitted. Apparently that's why I got them back, because I asked about Leah Faccio, script coordinator, to return them if they weren't going to use them, or at least look at them if they weren't going to use them. That probably accounted for the second stamp on the Voyager one. Probably look back and go, oh, okay, let's see what that is. Dig that out. Look at that. The Arbiter is about this double cross thing going on. You could easily alter it so it's not Cisco and it's not Jake being threatened by the bad guy, it's someone else. Or you could have Jake show up, but you have other characters from Strange Worlds not Strange New Worlds, but Strange Worlds, that could represent them. You could have it be Tam instead, who goes in the Tiger holodeck thing. And Tam and you have to flip Dax and the other guy around just to You could easily do that. You could say it's Nick Locarno and Dex. Or you could have Cisco just be back. Say it's like an alternate timeline where he's back. He's actually there with... But that's not as much fun because clearly it's literally 20 years later, or a little bit over 20 years later, because it's 1996. 25 years later. And it's not likely that they would have... would still be in that position. So I'm thinking, yeah, newer characters playing. And you could throw in legacy characters too. You could do like they did on I'm just thinking brainstorming. I'm just thinking you could throw in Kira. You could have General Kira in there, being General Kira on the station, and have Deep Space Nine in it. You could do a Deep Space Nine episode with this crew, because last year, a season and a half ago, over a year ago, when you did the Fallen Ones was last year, but the year before was the other one. You could have, you totally could have. You kind of had a pseudo Deep Space Nine story with Critical Vitriol episode, but you totally could do a Deep Space Nine episode. Those sets still exist. It's just Deep Space Nine. There's Deep Space Nine with the ops and everything. Because that's what it was. It was Deep Space Nine set, just slightly dressed different. So yeah, you could totally do that because the Lower Decks did it. Deep Space Nine episode. So cool. We're gonna do Fearful Symmetry, and then we're gonna do the Arbiter. Probably one right after that. And you could connect them. New Missy and Latori weren't originally connected. They were two different planets. New Missy was the founder planet in the story, the founder ex-colony in the story that Odo and the other 100 came from. And in the second one, in the Voyager one, it was in the Voyager in the Delta Quadrant. Oddly enough, there's a typo in it that says it's the Gamma Quadrant story. Oops. Also you have... But with the Arbiter, you have differences. That was a next-gen script that was rewritten as the Arbiter. And rewritten very well. The Arbiter was a really good Star Trek yarn from the Voyager era. And I'm reading it again 20 years later from the 2002 draft. I'm not surprised that it wasn't looked at twice. Because it almost would have made it fairly good, if not memorable, Season 5 or Season 6 episode of Voyager. We would have remembered and saw, oh, and they're top 10. There's my story right there. He did that. Oh, he did that. Oh, yeah. Just to show those track yards, guys. No, just kidding. But yeah, it would have been up there on the top 10 list. Is that good? No, the Fearful Symmetry isn't as good as that. It has some issues, but it would have made a decent Season 4 or 5 episode of Deep Space Nine. Thrown in there. Right around the time of the ship, not a little afterward. So yeah. But yeah, the female Forte. There's some... In the earlier draft, it doesn't include Flotter either, so that Flotter thing came later, so the Starcrackers one. So yeah, that wasn't... So it's the other way around with that story, so we cut it out of the story. But it might have still been mentioned in there, but no, it's not in there. That one's about the Cease, the True and the Breeders and the Latori. They have interesting names. Apparently their society was kind of like a post-atomic horror, but after the atomics, so they developed space travel fusion era anyway. And so they were called that because on that one, that was the Arbiter. On that one, the idea was that they subjugated one of their races on their planet to genetically engineer them like augments to make them viable after a nuclear encounter with a neighboring planet that they encountered that messed up their society. They caught a plague or a planet thing or something or other happened to them that made them infertile. So they had to make a group called the Breeders, which sounds kind of rude. But yeah, their hyper conservative bad guy is amusing, even though, and it's very topical for 2000 something. But the story was actually written in the 90s, in 96 or 97. So it's not a parable of even 9/11. It was way before that. So it's a parable of like post Cold War nations that split off of other nations in Eastern Europe, I guess. Yeah, it was a good story. It doesn't directly say any nations or anything. It's typical of a good Star Trek yarn. It is a good Star Trek yarn. It's a good story. What happens to be about Star Trek. And yeah, whereas the Deep Space Nine one is a good Star Trek story. They're both kind of bottle shows, though. They're mainly on a ship or station. Yeah, so yeah, Mark's cards and I discussed that along with the contest and the other things and all the quirks of the Mike Chang Milt story from years ago and all that. That's encoded in about a third, maybe more, maybe half of that novel about the Star Trek people, the Trek Core thing, is not even about Trek Core. It's about that other interesting blog sensation that happened. And it doesn't really poke fun of it. It just sort of says, okay, well, this is what happened, and this is what didn't happen, and here's what happened as a result. Let's explore that universe. And we didn't really go there in the when I reviewed the other one, but they eventually sort of made it come up and said, although he didn't necessarily ever admit that he didn't pitch, he did admit that he did not have anything to do with Voyager. I mean, with Discovery. So that was something. He also admitted that, the original draft of that script was pretty weak. And several people looked it over, including a Voyager lady and a guy from Rick and Morty, who, the guy from Rick and Morty, he went on to do Star Trek Lower Decks. So that explains why the two characters are in there, because he just sort of cribbed him. Yeah. The Orion girl and the transhuman Borg guy, he just cribbed it. Psst. And actually kind of the captain, too. Although he kind of gender swapped them. The burly captain guy's in there, too. So there's like 3 of them in there. But, they kind of should say, based on a premise by Mike Chang the Melt. Because it kind of is. Lower Decks is kind of, But it's also us. It's also, so I should say, based on a story by Adam Brown and John Yeager, Kal Kat and Mark's cards as well. Because, it kind of is too. It's silly in space. And earlier I was saying that it would be, that I wanted to make all comedies in the season of the show, but for Strange Worlds Season 3. But I see no problem with doing a few, it's still, there are still comedic elements, but I see no reason no problem with doing a drama or a dark comedy. And I consider the Voyager one to be a dark comedy, so there you go. Sort of a dark comedy. Stuff that's happening in it is a tragedy of errors, comedy sort of thing. These two warring factions that don't know why they're fighting anymore, but they're just doing it. And they're just like, because of this other guy over here, and then they try to start. It's also very similar to an old story that I wrote that years ago, The Stage is Set, which became an offshoot of the Starcrackers thing, which also had a similar ending. The bad guy propagandist alien guy is like calling an alien ship over to like blow up one of their cities, and then blaming it on the Federation ship that showed up or something. It's kind of something like that happens in there, and it's like, well, the Federation ship stops the bomb or something. It's like, your city didn't blow up. We stopped it. The Space City thing from orbit. Yeah. So, yeah. Really all I got to say about that. So apparently Kal Kat and Mark's cards, since we both wrote the script for the Deep Space Nine one, and I went on to write the Arbiter one. Because Mark's cards suggesting Mark's cards. It was like, why don't you just put that in Strange Worlds? Just do the script. What are they gonna? I mean, it's yours. You own the script. Just do it. If it's that good, put it up there. People watch it. So we're gonna do it. Yeah. So I'll film it. It doesn't need to be time travel back to the era of Deep Space Nine to the Legend, the middle season. It doesn't need to be a time travel trip to the Voyager either. It can be updated, like it's 20 years later, according to the story, or more than 20 years later. And it doesn't need to be, it can just be the new crew doing similar things. Sort of like what they did with The Child, on Next Generation, which was meant to be a Star Trek Phase 2 story from 10 years earlier. Yeah, I like that. Or when Strange New Worlds did the weird theater one that they were cribbing from Starcrackers. Yes, I am the king. Oh. Just recently watched a recent John Delancey interview in which he hadn't seen his performance in Picard Season 2 when they showed him it on their interview thing. He thought, that's the first time I've seen that. Seen the trailer with me in it. Or that's the first time I've seen that, is what he said. So he doesn't watch his own stuff, which is funny. Which is reminiscent of years ago when we saw him at a convention. And he kind of said the same thing. He was like, yeah, I got the gig, but I was technically doing another thing. And I wanted to do this other play. And Roddenberry kept calling me up and saying, no, you got to be in this. And then I thought I was going to be in it a lot. But then they're all, no, you can't be in it more than 3 times this season. Sorry. You're going to be in it a little bit. Not 3 times. Twice this season, maybe. If it's good. So yeah. There will be another Q episode in Chimera this season. There will be one. Maybe more. But there will definitely be one. Yeah. And what's funny is the some of the quirks that were in the Cisco one included the EVC was the name of the sector they flew to. So even though they were in like Joran space or something, they were near the EVC sector, which was near EVC, Evergreen Valley College planet, or Miriam. So they were near Miriam in that story. So I'm thinking that these 2 stories take place right after the pilot from this season. Like right after it. Just film these 2 and get them done. So, yeah. So I'll edit them and set up the characters so it's the modern era because, yeah. Because that's more interesting. But some legacy characters will be present. So Deep Space Nine 1, current Kira, General Kira would be in it. As well as probably current O'Brien, just for fun. Maybe Worf. But Cisco technically wouldn't be there anymore because he went to join the Prophets. So he wouldn't be there. But in the Voyager one, Admiral Janeway would be there. Tuvok would be there. He'd be the Arbiter because he has to be. It's Tuvok. Tuvok is over 100. He shows up as a senior citizen Arbiter guy on the ship. That would change the dynamic too because it's 25 years later and Tuvok is now ancient. So he'd be like really ancient and he'd be like, yes, Captain. They all could be kind of connected. They don't have to be in Edge of the Galaxy either. Yeah. And I could connect them figuratively to the other planets as well. I have an idea what to do with the Arbiter and where to put it. Yeah. Maybe a planetary system that Star Trek never went to that they happen to go to. But no, it's not Alpha Centauri. They're not going to do that. Maybe, yeah, it's not that. It's not that. It's probably Keptera and Kidrokonus. That would be my guess. It's those 2 planets. Because they're the most fan-oriented kind of places. And they're the most like obvious. And yeah, there's changelings there too. Or it might be the other one. It might be the Rebel Terra or one of the other ones. We'll see. I haven't figured it out yet. But I'm sure I'll come up with something really cool that the fans of Strange Worlds, Starship Strange Worlds, Starship Locations will enjoy. As we come toward this season, it's the 3rd season. The first, we're going to film the Robotech stuff. This is just the first season, the 3rd season of this anthology series, episodic style. Yeah. In the tradition of what Fuller was trying to do with Discovery, but ended up not doing Discovery. So, I don't know Fuller, so don't ask. Yeah, often they would ask. It's like, no, I don't know. I had to explain it to them. No, I really don't know those people. The connections were mainly with the games, so just and they still are. So the games, yeah. Incidentally, I have to re-upload the version of the game STO, so I can play the game. I haven't been on there yet, so you didn't see me yet. If you did, it was space aliens. I'll have to redo that. I'll have to fix it. It's kind of a mess. Yeah. One of the hard drives went down. Cat peed on it. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, so anyway, so next, yeah, I'll sign off.